Hello everyone, and I hope you're more prepared for Artfight than I am. I had this idea for a new character I quite liked, and I really wanted to get him up on Artfight, but the problem is that I had this idea like 2 or 3 days ago, so I had to really quickly pump out a simple ref and the code for his bio for the site, since I didn't want it to be the same as the other one that I made for my other two characters that I have up on there. And then I also wanted to have a matching pixel as well, so there was a lot of stuff that I needed to get done very quickly because Artfight starts in 2 days now at the time of recording this. For this particular reference sheet, because I was doing it so last minute, I really just wanted to get down one full body illustration. I also did do a lot of preliminary design sketches in my sketchbook, so if it looks like I know exactly what I'm doing while I'm designing him, that's why. I may put some of them here, I'm not sure. They're pretty rough and all over the place, mostly because I didn't really have a super clear direction of where I wanted to go at first. I mostly just knew that I wanted him to be a little bit gruff looking, and I wanted to give him like his little cute white forelock. So other than that, I didn't really have a great idea, so it took some time before I got to this point. But anyway, this guy is Detective Victor Fox. I know it's kind of like a OC name of all time, but I really wanted him to have a cool name because I'm trying to be really self-indulgent with this character. And so like the two big inspirations for, I guess, like the setting that he's in and him as well are like Dishonored and Resident Evil. If I ever made a game about him, it would not be a 3D horror game, even though I might wish it was, because it's so hard to make 3D horror games. It would probably be more of a mystery detective type game with more text than anything else, because that's a little bit easier for a single person to do. And it's also like a type of game that I'm personally really interested in playing myself. I love to read. But basically, Detective Fox, he gets tangled up in a mystery that ends up being like much bigger and darker than it seems at first, and then he is subjected to all of the horrors that come with that. And I think that there might be like some kind of creepy supernatural cult involved or something, and like definitely scary monsters, maybe some like undead, although I'm not really sure I want to go like full on Resident Evil zombie because like, I don't know. We'll have to see. Like I said, I really just started thinking about this guy. I think realistically though, I would like to make a comic with him and his buddy. I didn't decide on a good design for his little friend that I want to make him, but Victor, he used to be a police detective and then left the force, and I think in like the plot for him, he ends up having to like team back up with his old partner from before he left. I'm not totally sure how serious I am about the idea for him, other than it being kind of like a fun concept, but we'll see how far I get with it. There's something else that I'd like to work on a little bit more pressingly, but I'm going to keep that close to my chest for now because I realized that when I start talking about stuff, I get that like, ooh, I've already shared it feeling, and then I don't do it. So it's a secret for now. Anyway, other than struggling a bit with the standing pose, I think his reference came together quite quickly. I did go in and tweak his outfit after I finished doing the line art. I think that I had made it look a little bit too historically accurate with like the closed frock coat under his overcoat, and I just felt like it looked kind of boring, and I felt like this looked a little bit nicer, a little bit more interesting. And then also like the big kind of like spats. I'm not exactly sure if they're spats if they're this tall, but anyway, it just looks a little bit more cooler, a little bit more action oriented. I also like, I finished doing the inking and then I was like, this is so bad, I hate this, and went to bed thinking, oh my god, I'm gonna have to redo it, I'm gonna have to redraw the whole thing. And then I woke up the next day and I was like, what is wrong with me? Like, it looks fine. I don't know, I think it was really like a wake-up call for myself to be like, wow, I'm like so hard on myself and I'm really, really critical of my art like all the time, even though like I would say probably 90% of the time, the stuff that I'm making is like perfectly fine, quite good. So yeah, I don't know. It was a really weird experience. I remember just being like, oh, it looks so bad. But I don't know. I think it turned out pretty good. The colors are a little bit funny. I think I might tweak them later, but ultimately I'm pretty happy with the design, and I think that it's quite a serviceable reference sheet for what it is. So after I was finished with the reference, inking and coloring it and everything, I moved on to making a little pixel page doll of him. I really wanted to be able to put him on my main profile on Artfight like I had done with Will and Peter, my other two characters that I have up there. I had already done pixels of them in the past, and I have a video kind of going over that process in like more detail, and I'll link it in the little card above. But I decided like I really wanted one, and so I had to kind of like get one out really quickly because pixel art can take like a deceptively long time, I find. And initially for this little doll, I had the idea of having him be like walking holding the magnifying glass, and so that he'd be like more upright. But then I was thinking about where I really wanted to put him on the page, and I thought that he might look a little bit better if he was more horizontal rather than vertical, and so I knocked him over, put him on his knees, and now he's like crawling around looking for clues. And I actually think this turned out like pretty cute. It did stump me when I was trying to animate him a little bit. I was gonna do something more involved with him kind of like raising and lowering the magnifying glass, but I really only had like a couple hours allotted for this particular part of my preparation, and I just didn't think that it was gonna work out because I would have had to like redraw the oval of the magnifying glass like a bunch of times, and I just partially didn't want to do that, and also partially felt like it was going to take too long. So I just went with like the absolutely most simple bounce. Literally, he just moves like down 2 pixels and then back up. So it's not as like smooth or interesting as the other two, but I think it looks pretty good. And I'm realizing now that I didn't actually even animate him blinking. Probably because it was on like a weird angle. Because his head is tilted, the pixels are on like a diagonal, and I'm sure I could have done it. But I feel like my brain was protecting me from having to draw a bunch of like diagonal lines. I don't know. I feel like it's hard. It's like when you're building in Minecraft, you don't want to have to build on a diagonal. It's kind of the same idea. It just looks a bit funny, I think, sometimes when you have to work with diagonals in pixel art. But that being said, I think he turned out really, really cute. And I really like the way that he ends up looking on the page. He's a little bit smaller than the other two for some reason, even though they're done like on the same size canvas, but I like him. He's really cute, makes for a nice little page embellishment. Then it was time to put everything together for his profile. I don't know if you guys care at all about coding and HTML and stuff, but I thought it would be fun to document the process of putting together the profile and writing the HTML. Ultimately, it's pretty simple. Artfight lets you use Bootstrap, so it's even simpler than it would be if it was done with pure CSS, which is the thing that makes websites look pretty, and HTML, which is the structure of the website. Bootstrap basically comes up with these little classes that you can apply to the HTML easily, rather than having to write out a bunch of CSS yourself. So it's very handy for little things like this and quickly developing nice, responsive websites and little profiles like this. It's the same as Toy House, basically. Eventually, I'm planning to make myself a website, and when I do that, if you guys want, I could do a more in-depth tutorial on HTML and CSS if you would be interested. I know quite a bit about it, and I really like web development, so it's something that I would like to make a video on, so let me know if you are interested. I may just do it anyway, but it's always nice to get a little bit of extra feedback. But basically, what I'm doing here is setting up all the different chunks of the website. The divs are divisions or dividers, and by applying the container, row, and column class to these divs, we can set up sort of like a grid on the page. And the P for paragraph and img for image tags then go inside the divisions to place them within the grid that we've made. Now you can see that I've added these like H1 and H5 classes. These are specific to Bootstrap. HTML has H1 and H5 tags, where the H stands for heading, but Bootstrap lets you apply heading styles without actually using a heading element. It's not super important for this particular application, but it can be really useful when you're building a more complex website, since you want it to be very clear to the computer what is a heading and what number it has, which tells the computer like how important that heading is on the page. So you'd want your page title, for example, to be an H1. You can also probably see me tabbing back and forth between the Bootstrap website and also the W3 Schools website, because I can never remember how to type out a image tag. W3 Schools is a really amazing resource if you're interested in learning more about HTML, or if you're like me and you know about HTML but you're just like forgetful. Same with CSS. It has basically like all the information you could ever need, and it will give you lots of examples on how you can use these classes and tags and things, and then also provide you with kind of like some best practices for use. For example, with best practices, that would include things like when you are using an image tag, you want to include alt text so that people who are using screen readers can understand and navigate your website. And in addition to this, if the image should not load for any reason, it will then display that alt text in the space where the image should go. So it is quite useful, not only from an accessibility standpoint, but just from a general website building standpoint. But you might not know to do that unless you were looking at W3 Schools. So it's a really great resource. Another thing that's really great about Bootstrap is that it makes it really easy to make your HTML mobile friendly. Basically, make it look good on both computers and your phone. It has these things called breakpoints, and they are like extra small, medium, etc. And basically they correspond to different screen sizes. So extra small is the size of a mobile phone screen, and then small is basically anything bigger than that. The default automatically is extra small because you're really supposed to develop things for phones first and then adapt them for bigger screens, because most people these days access the internet on their phones. I did not do this, so you can see me going back in and adding in extra classes, and then also extra like small classes with like SM tag attached to them to accommodate for this. And while I add these in, I also pull up a little window on the right hand side, which is called the inspector. You can use the inspector to look at code and play with CSS directly in the browser to try and troubleshoot things. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm making sure that it sort of flips into a column the way that I want it to when the screen gets really small, rather than being in multiple columns like for a computer, because if you have to look at multiple columns of content on your phone, it can become a real nightmare, or it can just get like fully pushed off the side of the page and then you won't be able to see it. So that's what I'm doing there. The inspector is like a really indispensable tool for developing web pages, especially, like actual websites and things like that. Anyway, once the coding was mostly done, I got a little bit lazy and I used the default Artfight colors and fonts, which added some little spans into the code, which like a span is basically like wrapping a little specific portion of the text in styles. So it's great for things like drop caps or like a very small portion of bold text in a bigger paragraph and things like that. And I don't like having them in my code if I don't need them, so I just removed them. It's done here so that the Artfight website can like inject the styles easily sort of on whatever element that needs to be styled, but I don't want it there, so I just took it out. And basically that's pretty much it. I think I'm basically done my Artfight prep now. I still need to get that little Artfight card that I can post on like my other socials, but I don't think that should take very long because I'm just gonna use the little like icons from Artfight for their heads, whatever. But I'm really looking forward to Artfight. I'm super excited. I really want to try doing an attack every single day, although we'll see, it feels a little bit ambitious. I'm also still finishing up a game jam, so who knows how that's gonna go, but I'm gonna try my best to stick to the goal, and I think it'll be really good for me, and I'm hoping to post a bunch of shorts with little speed paints of the attacks. So if you want, you can give me a follow on Artfight or drop your username below and maybe I'll draw one of your characters. Thank you so much for watching, and I really look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye!